Good evening, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. And of course, in traditional Norwich fashion, it's drizzling here. Much akin to what I always say to myself. Here in Norwich, it almost never snows, it almost always rains, and the bus service is shit. But of course, you didn't come here to find out about my catchphrase about Norwich. No, I want to talk about two stories today. One of which, I would think a lot of people will agree, is much more significant than the other. I am, of course, talking about the lieutenant colonel who was stabbed by a barbaric piece of shit versus a group of Muslim assaulters, basically, who went out their way to attack the police and even left one female officer with a broken nose. Now, admittedly, I've been trying to speak about the soldier this morning, actually. I was trying to do a take then. What was even funnier was there was a guy who even called me a knob for doing this video recording whilst I was on the bus. But bollocks to him, I say, and I digress. There was a barbarian, because I don't want to use the word man, who decided to go out of his way, come up behind this soldier when he was at his most vulnerable, and basically take two knives and stab the guy in the back. Yes, this black man who stabbed him showed the absolute pride of black people by stabbing a guy in the back. Obviously, I'm being sarcastic here, and not every black person does this, just to be clear. But what I can say, without any doubt in my mind, is I have made mention of knife crime statistics in London, for example, where basically the vast majority of knife crimes, I think it was it 2020 I did it in? I can't remember. But anyway, the vast majority of knife crime statistics are predominantly done by black gangs or black people. Now, I don't know if this man was a Muslim or if he was a migrant or whatever, but what I do know is that this man is a subhuman piece of shit, bluntly speaking. And I'd say exactly the same damn thing if it was a white person as well. Now, this lieutenant colonel is severely injured, but alive, thankfully. And my prayers go out to him, wishing him a very quick recovery. And my prayers also go out to his family, who have to endure this shit because of what DEI has done to this country. And I'm not going to say, but of course the mainstream media won't tell you this, because it's more along the lines of, but most of the mainstream media did not report this, because they were more interested in the other story, which I'll get to shortly. But the cold bit of truth is that this story definitely should have taken priority over the other one. Because if our own damn soldiers can't even feel safe in their own fucking streets, then it leaves Britain in a very precarious position, and that's putting it nicely. This attack is being likened to that committed by those two NPCs, the jihadists of Al-Muhajirun, the Michael brothers. You know, Awajabojo and Baje, or whatever their bloody names are. The ones who were armed with a service revolver that was basically decommissioned and non-functioning, and of course a knife and a cleaver. And they ended up beheading Lee Rigby and causing this person to have a damn stroke. Anyway, this is being likened to it because it's pretty similar to what we've seen in the past. And remember, the Lee Rigby attack, they even quoted from the Quran and gave two verses basically to the British public as to why Allah commanded him to kill. This barbarian who attacked this lieutenant colonel was even seen licking the blade of blood. This should tell you how much of a subhuman scumbag this person is, who I'm not even going to say the name of because I don't want to give this cunt any more attention than he deserves. It is attacks like this that make the British people feel so on edge right now, that make it feel like we basically don't feel safe in our own countries, in our own streets, in our own homes. Because what we see is we see migrants and jihadists running rampant in our country. While they are handled with kid gloves, patriots are handled with iron fists and iron clubs. And we're beaten within an inch of our life if we even show the slightest signs of overexcitedness. Like I said, I wish a fast and speedy recovery for our Lieutenant Colonel, who was attacked in the most disgusting way by a cowardly subhuman piece of shit who, let's face it, this man wouldn't have the balls to face this Lieutenant Colonel if he was armed. How long do you think it would take the Colonel to kill him, 10 seconds? Not even 5? I think it would probably take about 2 seconds. He'd take out the trash and we'd be one less jihadi. But of course, if he does that, I suspect the NPCs in the top brass, who will mollycoddle the extremists and pander to them while throwing the book of our soldiers, would probably demote him or dishonorably discharge him. Because that, my friends, is the shit state of this country. But I've spoken enough about this soldier attack, because I think, really, the media's lack of coverage speaks volumes for it already. With the BBC even completely omitting the details of the attacker, which should show you how corrupt our media is. The double standards and two-tier broadcasting of our media. And that's about to become very prevalent in the next damn story. So, was it the Manchester airport? I think it was. Yeah, I believe it was. So, the Manchester airport. There was a group of mullerices, because let's face it, these cowards would not attack real men. Thought I had something. Of course, it's one of the electric scooters. Anyway, these mullerices would never dare to attack real men. If they saw a group of, I don't know, football fans, burly football ones I'll add, I can guarantee you these fuckers would be running straight in the opposite direction. Because they're cowards. They will only attack if they have the numbers advantage, or if their targets they deem are physically weaker than them. But of course the mainstream media won't tell you this. You know the drill, folks, because, say it with me, it doesn't suit the narrative. These Islamic scumbags wouldn't dare take on real men. Never. But they'll attack women. They'll attack women, and one of these female officers, these cunts broke her nose. I'd like to break theirs, quite frankly. But I'm not allowed to do that because that would be against the law. You know the old saying, an eye for an eye? Well, I'm glad one officer up at that airport had the balls, whether up here or down there, or in my case both, to be able to give some really robust policing to one of these cunts who was not conforming. So after a group of police officers were attacked by these mullers, they were requested to lay down, hands behind their backs. Now, some people claim that the person who got kicked was being tased, though I couldn't clearly see that in the video. What I did see, however, was that the man had his arms at his sides, not behind his back. He was not handcuffed. And bear in mind, at an airport, police are going to be armed for obvious reasons. Because we don't want to see another airplane get hijacked by terrorists with guns or bombs or whatever. And he could clearly see from the NPCs in the police force, because not one of them had the balls to actually give some intimidation factor. He knew damn well he was going to have to give it himself. And my God, did he. And he did what I think a lot of people are cheering for right now. Because at the end of the day, this is a classic fuck around, find out scenario. Where this man, this mullah, did not comply with the police. And frankly, he should be thankful he didn't get double tapped, if you catch my drift. Because quite frankly, assaulting police officers you're pretty close to being right up there among the terrorists, because it implies that you'll stop at nothing to be able to get your objectives done, whatever they may be. Now, whether that is bombing an airport, bombing a plane, hijacking a plane, or just being a general public fucking nuisance, we will probably never know. But what we do know is that multiple officers were injured by these scumbags, and they were not complying. As I said, one of them had his hands beside his side, so he was not fully detained. What this man, this policeman, did was he gave him a swift kick to the face and stamped on his head. Personally, I'm not a big fan of the stamp on the head, because obviously you could cause brain damage with that shit. And let me be clear, I am absolutely 100% against police brutality. However, as I said, this man could see that all the officers around him did not have the balls to intimidate the suspects, because that's what a lot of it comes down to when you're arresting people. It's not just a matter of, can you get down on the ground and put your hands behind your back, please? It's get on the fucking ground and put your hands behind your back. That's the kind of thing you need to do, obviously with a bit more aggressive tone, but this is just me giving an example more than anything. The point is, the people around this man needed to be telling him, get on the fucking ground, put your hands behind your fucking back. And frankly, anybody who has even half a brain cell in them will comply with an armed officer immediately. Because they know damn well, if they don't, their next action could be their last. At close range, like if I'm pointing at the floor right now, I could easily, if I was in a policeman's shoes right now, put a bullet in someone if they try to make a move. All I'd have to do is aim for centre mass. That person's done. So as I've said before and will say again, these Muller Rices should be thankful that they didn't get a bullet between the eyes. Because, frankly, I think there are people who would not be showing as much restraint. And they certainly wouldn't if it was a white person, let's face it, or a black person. It's just the Mullers. But I think at this point, this officer did what was necessary to make sure these fuckers complied. Quite rightly so. They weren't complying, you pay the consequences. In this case, this Muller gets a kick to the face and a stamp to the back of the head. As I said, frankly, he should be thankful he's still alive right now. But what's sad is the media immediately jumped on this story. World-breaking news! Muslims attacked at airport by off-duty police officer. No, that's not what it was. This was multiple Mullers going into an airport, assaulting police officers, and they're now playing the victim, or the media's trying to make them out as the victim. Bullshit. If you fuck around, you'll find out. If you attack officers, don't expect mercy. Don't start pleading for forgiveness. Don't start saying you're the victims when you started it, which is something a lot of the mainstream media are not going to show you that side of, because it doesn't suit their narrative. They are just going to show you the officer attacking these Mullers. Anybody who didn't have the full context of it would immediately think, oh, this horrible abuse to this poor Muslim group, when in reality, these guys are criminals and should be deported right fucking now. And last time I checked, it does go against Section 2 of the 2006 Fraud Act, fraud by false representation, to knowingly omit this kind of information and portray the other party in a light that is not completely true. Now, let it be known, I'm not a big fan of the police. And I think a lot of people know that, especially in my older videos when I said, fuck the government and fuck the police, quite frankly. But in this case, I am 100% on that officer's side. I am 150% on that officer's side. Because at the end of the day, he has to think with a high emergency mentality. What if those Muslims had bombs? What if those Muslims had guns? What if they were going to use them on them? That's what it comes down to at the end of the day. Not just a matter of, oh, well, he kicked a muller in the face, therefore he's got to be suspended. And it's sad that that man's been suspended, because he's just doing whatever he felt was necessary in a very volatile, high-risk situation. But what makes this story even worse is now the Islamic band, the hardline jihadists, are now doing protests, calling for this officer to be sacked. That's right, mob rule is trying to get rid of this man. Now it's down to the police forces to have the guts to stand there and take it. Do not get rid of that officer, because that officer could well have been a hero for all we know. We don't know what these people had, or have, or what they would have done. If these races did have weapons on them, as I said, that officer's got to be thinking of the worst case scenario. I know I usually say don't catastrophize things, but at the end of the day, it's kind of the police's job at an airport to catastrophize things, because what if they did have a bomb? What if they did have a gun? All hell could have broken loose in that airport, and we could have been looking at significant casualties. What this man did was what he felt was necessary to basically stop the situation, and I applaud him for it. But as we always know, when Islam doesn't get their way, they throw their toys out of the pram. Or in this case, when somebody does something to their community, mob rule, hive mind mentality. And I should know this, I play a lot of StarCraft. Anyway, these guys have a hive mind, and they all collectively come together and protest. Just like how there was one time where an imam was arrested. I'm not sure if it was Birmingham or somewhere, but I know there was an imam that was arrested. And then all of a sudden, there was a load of Muslims that came up and told the police basically, you better release that imam, and they let him go. They know mob rule works because our police are too spineless to do what's necessary for fear of being called racist, even though you can't be racist against a religion. But this is something, of course, the mainstream media don't want to tell you. And now they're doing the exact same thing with this police officer, who is a hero, in my opinion. Some people are even calling him to be knighted. I personally think that's a bit of a stretch, but I definitely think he should be commended. I think he should be commended and not honked like that, because at the end of the day, it could have been so much worse. That's the thing. I know it's a poor habit to use the what if scenarios, but in an airport you've got to, because otherwise, if it happens and we don't do something, obviously you're going to get a bollocking anyway, because people are going to be like, well, why didn't you do this, that and the other? But this is the story the mainstream media pumped out to the world as world-breaking news, that a muller group of people were getting attacked by police. This is the complete wrong context and narrative, and the media should be ashamed of themselves. I guarantee you they would never put this article out to the news if the script was flipped. If it was Muslim police officers attacking a white person who was assaulting police officers, they would be actively condemning the man, and quite rightly, to be honest. But the thing is, because it's Islam, they try to go with a different narrative rather than tell the truth. And as I said, Section 2 of the 2006 Fraud Act, fraud by false representation. They are falsely representing the police forces. And I hope, this is one of the very few times I'm with Greater Manchester Police, I hope they take the media to task on this and sue them. Because at the end of the day, these are blatant lies from the mainstream media. They know exactly what's happened. We could easily send them the full context of what's happened, and then at bare minimum they have to change the story, or if they double down on it, they face prosecution. That's what it boils down to. But it sickens me that they'd rather prioritise this shit over a soldier in our own streets getting stabbed in the back by what could be a jihadi. Need I say more? But our mainstream media, as we all know, just like a lot of our police are two-tier. But of course, we all know what the Liberals will do. The Liberals will basically be saying, this is a poor crime against mullers. This is a reprehensible attack on mullers. When, as I said, it's absolutely not the case. It's just the left blowing things out of proportion and out of context as well. And I think it's time we take out the trash, metaphorically speaking. We need to remove these Islamic scumbags from our country. If they want to treat this place like a third world shithole, then we should send them back to the third world shitholes that they came from. I would expect any other country to do the exact same thing that officer did to these people if it was perceived that they could be a significant threat. They already established that they are quite violent. They already established they are willing to physically hurt someone. So does it stand to reason, in that case, why a policeman has to take those actions to defend his fellow officers? Or the airport? I think it does. And what Islam needs to stop doing is playing the victim when they're the ones who are the perpetrators. That's like if I were to put my hand in the cookie jar, take out a cookie, I get caught, and then I say, but this is the cookie's fault. I just got it out of the tub or the tin. Like, are you kidding me? Of course, my mum would absolutely be roasting me rather than telling me off more than anything. She's better at roasting the shit out of me than she is actually putting discipline in, to be fair. But she still manages to make it work somehow. So I've got to give my mum credit for that. But anyway, the point is, Islam cannot have their cake and eat it. And that's exactly what they're doing here. All I do is just go to the cake shop and get another. Anyway, this is what they're doing. They're attacking people and then claiming to be the victims of an attack. Nuh-uh. Anybody else would be laughed out of the airport. This is why we have to come down tough on these bastards. We need to take out the trash and put them where they rightfully belong. Back in the third world shitholes where their death cult ideology belongs. And it's time for the media to stop lying to us. You will not subvert the truth just for your 5 minutes in the spotlight and trying to push your globalist Marxist agenda. But of course, all this also underlines something else as well, which is very, very important for the 27th of July, 2 days, when I will be down there in London, outside the Royal Courts of Justice, ready to take on that protest. Obviously not to disrupt it or anything, but just generally speaking. But I'll be down there, I'll be ready to speak the truth, alongside those glorious speakers up there. On the 27th of July, I'm going to be up there, Tommy Robinson's going to be up there, Paul Fort, Maya Toozy, Richard Inman, just to name a few. We're all going to be up there. But you know who's going to be up there as well? The mainstream media. And what this article that I've done here right now is, as well as highlighting the two-tier media broadcasting from the mainstream media regarding two stories, is we need to be ready to call out these traitors. We need to be there on the 27th of July in London, and anybody in the mainstream media or the newspapers that even attempts to put falsehoods, libelous slander, or fake news on the internet in the hopes they will label us as far-right, racist, football hooligans, thugs, and lockdown protesters and all that shit, we need to call them out for it. We need to be ready to call out the mainstream media. And I will do everything I can that if I see any of these articles out there, I'm not just going to name and shame the broadcasters. I'm not just going to broadcast the NPCs and the newspaper rags who are doing this. I'm going to name and shame the publishers. I will do everything in my power to expose the traitors who hide in those media outlets. You may think that you are safe hiding behind your rags, hiding behind your setups in your broadcast stations. Let me tell you something. I'm coming for you. And you cannot hide from me. If I have to spend 3 fucking hours searching up every single media outlet, every single fake news article, every single newspaper that puts out fake news, I will do it without hesitation. Because at the end of the day, we are the media, and we will not allow libelous, slanderous statements to be made by fake news media outlets whose only agenda is to push Marxism and globalism and to libel and slander their opponents. We are far better than them. We are the media, and we will win this war against the British people.